My name is Chandler Kellogg. I am with Hot Button IO, which is a full service digital marketing agency. And what we're specifically focused on today is maximizing your success with e commerce. So, to give you a little bit of the outline here, we're going to be talking about the e commerce platforms, the ones that you're able to pick between, the functionality of plugins that you might want to add on to those platforms if it's not something that's natively integrated within the platform. Shopping feeds for marketplaces, that's something that a lot of e-commerce businesses overlook, and it's very important for your growth. I'll detail more when we get there. Cross-selling and upselling, this is again pretty low-hanging fruit for a lot of e-commerce stores that they don't look into, and there's a lot of things that you can do there that will dramatically increase your revenue for relatively low lift. And then some important KPIs to pay attention to. These are things that you want to really have a good dial on if you run an e-commerce business to make sure that you have a healthy business. So, starting with the e-commerce platforms, one of the first scalability. I would say this isn't something that is a huge consideration for a lot of small to mid-sized businesses, as you likely won't have a lot of issues with this traffic up front. But if you already have an existing business, especially if you're in the enterprise category, or say, for example, you're running a marketing push that's much larger than it has been in the past, you want to be aware of the scalability of your current platform. So scalability is basically your platform's capacity to handle increased business size and transactions without compromising performance. Some of you might have seen that if you ever see, ticket sales for a really popular concert, or those websites can go down based on traffic. That's just something you want to be mindful of. So factors there would be handling traffic spikes, adding new products and categories. Certain categories might not be able to be configured the way you want based on the platform. So it depends on the categories that you have and the granularity. And a big thing, though, you want to consider is the multi-language and multi-currency support. So if you plan on selling internationally at all, certain platforms do not have that functionality built in, and you'll be twisting its arm to get that done. So if that's a core factor, you need to lead with one of those if you're international business versus US and domestic. And there are a lot of different plugins that you can have that can add on to this, but ideally you would want that built in. So some of the things that you can look at to support your scalability: the cloud hosting solutions that you have, auto scaling, and then advanced analytics for growth forecasting is basically all fancy ways of being able to see monitoring those traffic spikes and making sure that your plan is able to scale up pretty quickly to do that. But again, this is probably not a huge consideration for a lot of you at the outset. It's just something to keep in mind for the future. User experience is something that you do want to pay attention to from the beginning. So your user experience, or UX, is the overall experience and satisfaction a user has when navigating and interacting with the e-commerce site. So there's a lot of basic things that you can do there, but the ones that you want to pay attention to the most are your website design and layout, making sure that that is something that is logical, easy to access, especially for your most profitable product categories. You want to make sure that those are easy to access quickly. One of the things that you want to monitor there is like click depth. So if you have a particular category that you're pushing pretty hard, you want to make sure it doesn't take 4 or 5 clicks to get there. That should be something that people can navigate to pretty easily. So website design and layout, navigation ease and search functionality, mobile responsiveness, and page loading speed. One of the biggest things that I see a lot of e-commerce sites get wrong is usually the mobile responsiveness and page loading speed. Some of the things you want to look for there, I can give a number of different tools if people want to follow up afterwards, and there's some of my other presentations, but Cloudinary is one. So looking at image compression and lazy loading. A lot of people who have e-commerce sites, they're pretty image heavy, and they don't do a lot of work to make sure those are web optimized. So there are file formats specific to that. I think WebP is one of the most recent ones that is very performance optimized. But there are tools that you can run and make sure that your images are properly compressed, and so your website will load quickly instead of loading slowly. And basically, each additional second or even fraction of a second causes massive drop-offs in the performance of your website. So that's, especially image optimization, is one thing that you want to pay a lot of attention to. Integrations, this is something you also need to look for from the jump, because I see a lot of people build their website or select their platform before considering what CRM they're going to use, which is client relationship management software. So if you also have kind of a sales cadence built onto that, you need to make sure that it's integrated with your website. Same with payment gateways. There are certain payment platforms that are not natively integrated with certain website platforms. So you want to make sure that the marketing platforms, the CRM, and the payment gateways, or any additional functionality that you want to plug into this website, is integrated out of the gate. A lot of these website platforms have APIs or things called webhooks where you can configure that manually, but that is going to be something where you'd have to engage a developer to do that most of the time. So it's best practice to have these things natively integrated so you don't have to pay a developer for a bunch of custom integrations that you'll probably need maintenance on in the future too, and something that you could easily mess up. So those are the main ones that you want to look at: payment processing, shipping, and fulfillment, especially ones that also have tax functionality or multi-currency, multi-language support if you're going international, and the marketing and sales tools you're going to use. So some of the leading platforms, these are the ones that you would want to be looking at from the start. I would recommend for the vast majority of small to mid-sized businesses, Shopify. It's known for ease of use, comprehensive app marketplace, and strong support for beginners. So this is something where you might not even need to pay a developer or an agency to get started with Shopify. They have a lot of templates. It's easy to implement. Kind of the downside though would be if you are trying to do a bunch of customizations, it is not quite as flexible as some other platforms. Magento has a lot of robust features and customization options for large and complex stores. You need a developer to implement this and support it on an ongoing basis most of the time. Magento, unless you are already an established e-commerce platform and you know exactly the types of functionality that you're looking for and you're planning a migration, that might be right for you. But Shopify is usually going to be a better fit. And WooCommerce is a flexible open source solution designed for WordPress websites. This is something that is good for people who are already familiar with WordPress, or if they already have a primary website that's built with WordPress. I'm personally not as familiar with WooCommerce as I am with Shopify. So I would still push for Shopify if you haven't already built your website, but if you've already built it and it's in WordPress, WooCommerce might be a good option. Some considerations here based on the platform selection, business type, and size. Like I said, Shopify and WooCommerce are good for the small to mid-sized businesses. Magento is better for enterprise. Technical requirements, same thing. Like I said, Shopify beginners, WooCommerce if you already know WordPress pretty well, or you have a development team that's already familiar with WordPress. Magento enterprise. And then that is one of the considerations though for Shopify, is that it can have some higher costs due to monthly fees, extensions, and development. But at the same time, WooCommerce, although it might be more cost effective, what I see a lot of small businesses, especially if they don't have in-house development teams or if they're not engaged with an agency for development or ongoing support, they often overload their website with a bunch of competing plugins that slow it down, degrade performance, and have overlapping functionality. So WooCommerce is only really more cost effective if you really know what you're doing, which a lot of people can get themselves into a lot of trouble because WooCommerce doesn't check for compatibility the same way that Shopify does. So again, if you have a developer and they already know WordPress, WooCommerce might be a good option. Otherwise, I'd stick with Shopify. Functionality that you're looking for in plugins. All of these websites have thousands, if not even millions of plugins, especially on the WordPress side. So you want to make sure that you are not adding too many plugins if you don't have the support of a developer to make sure that they don't have overlapping functionality and aren't breaking things on your website. I see a lot of businesses that have WordPress websites break their own websites with theme updates and plugins that have unexpected functionality. So some of the key ones that you want to look into first are SEO plugins. Those help improve your search engine visibility, meta tags, customization, sitemap generation, SEO analysis. All that is a fancy way of saying this tool will help Google find and rank the categories on your website, the individual pages, product pages, make sure those are set up for success. And those tools will, like Yoast SEO or all-in-one SEO, those will be able to tell you in very plain language certain things that you need to change to make sure that you can rank well. Payment gateways, like I said, you really want to understand what payment processing company that you're using before you set up the website. Stripe is what I would recommend for the vast majority of businesses. PayPal is good, although I have a lot of experience with PayPal kind of randomly holding your funds for very long periods of time, especially if you sell on platforms like eBay. So I would personally try to stay away from PayPal most of the time and go for a native Stripe integration. But there's Square and there's lots of other different options depending on the setup of your store. And if you also have physical sales, like if you have a retail location, those are things that you want to look into. Analytics plugins, these are going to be relevant for tracking and generating the KPIs that we go over later. Google Analytics is one of the best ones, but WordPress also has Monster Insights. There's also ones like Kissmetrics, but basically you want ones that can track your website traffic, user behavior, and key e-commerce metrics, which we'll touch on later. And then when selecting the plugins, you want to look at reliability, support, and compatibility. So making sure that it has a high number of reviews. It's still actively supported. There are a lot of plugins, especially with WordPress, that aren't supported. So if they break your website, you're not going to be able to get in touch with the developer who designed it to fix that. And that ties into support. You want to have one that is recently updated, has active patches to it, and has support that you can reach out to if anything goes wrong. And then part of that is ensuring that it has compatibility with your platform. And like I said, that is the issue where if you are on the WordPress side, you can really, really break your website doing a lot of things there. So Shopify, even though it kind of ties your hands sometimes, you usually won't need an ongoing maintenance package, or you don't have to be as worried about these plugins because Shopify has a process for vetting those. Whereas WordPress, it's kind of like you can install anything under the sun. If you think about the e-commerce division there. Shopify is a little bit more like Apple. You know, you can't like root your device and do all kinds of crazy customizations to it, but it works pretty well out of the gate for most people. And then, you know, WordPress is a little bit more like Android. It's open source. You can do a bunch of different stuff, but as part of that, you can software brick your phone if you don't know what you're doing. So those are your considerations there. When you're configuring them, the biggest thing that I see a lot of small businesses don't set up properly is there is an ability to for a lot of these websites to set up a staging environment. Without getting too technical, staging is basically how you test your website before you push it live to the internet. Production is the live website that people are interacting with. So a lot of small businesses don't know how to set that up, and they just push everything to production. And if it breaks your website, then your website's down, you know, for however many days or sometimes even like a week if you have to get in touch with the developer to fix it. So when you have this set up, especially if you're in a WordPress or Magento type environment, you want to have staging and production to be able to understand that when you push an update to your website, it's not going to break it, and you can catch that before it goes live. Um, Configuring settings, monitoring performance, a lot of those go into the analytics tools that we looked at before. So performance testing, GT metrics, Google page speed, that is mostly going to be what you evaluate on the image optimization side and plugin integration. So to make sure that some cool new plugin that you have doesn't make your load time on your website go to 10 or 12 seconds, which is really going to kill a lot of your conversions. So those are how you would evaluate the kind of speed and performance. Regular updates and maintenance. Again, Shopify doesn't really need a lot of this stuff, but if you have WordPress, you need to go in there and check what plugins need to be updated. And there are also certain tools through hosting platforms like SiteGround where they can update that stuff automatically. But the consideration is basically if you're going to use WordPress, you need some kind of ongoing maintenance package if you aren't a technical user. Quality over quantity, you want to use as few plugins as possible. Plugins in general tend to break other things on your website, kill some kind of core SEO functionality, or overlap with other tools. So you want to find more all-in-one tools that have high rankings, have multiple functionalities instead of having tools that have overlapping functionalities, where it's just going to completely slow your website down. So, shopping feeds. This is one of the things that I would say is almost never flagged by a lot of marketing agencies when they design a website for you. And this is the number one thing that's probably going to drive success for your business, especially early on with visibility, is your shopping feeds and integrations with marketplaces. So, a shopping feed is essentially detailed data files that list all of your product attributes in a format required by that channel, which is a fancy way of saying the listings that you see on, you know, Amazon, Google, all those type of things. There is, you know, text files that are give information about all of the products that you have, and you upload that feed to these platforms. The significance there is that you get listings on additional platforms, which makes your products more searchable and purchasable. So it's not just on your website, it's also available on things like Google, Amazon, and Walmart. And that goes into the main three platforms that you want to do this for. Google Merchant Center, if you go onto Google and you look for the shopping results that pop up at the top, which I can show later, you need to have a Google Merchant Center platform claimed and have your listing uploaded to there and synced regularly for those shopping results to show up. And those are huge because if someone is not looking for your brand, um, if they're looking, for example, if you're a furniture store and you want to show up for, you know, chairs near me or couches near me, um, those types of searches, you need to have your Google Merchant Center set up to where your listings show up, because then you also have the additional, you're ranking for a lot of those queries instead of people just searching for your brand name. So that gives you almost the most immediate lift, and it's free. Um, Amazon Seller Central and Walmart Marketplace Everyone's familiar with Amazon, so to be able to get listings on Amazon, you have to go through Seller Central. Walmart, same type of thing. These enable you to get much wider organic views, which means that you don't have to do a lot of paid spend to get additional results and to show up beyond just your website. There are tools that can manage that for you, which we'll go into next. So some of the best practices there, make sure you have accurate product information. A lot of these have the ability to set up automatic syncs. So if you have, say, a listing where you're suddenly out of stock, it will take it out of those feeds instead of having people place orders and be upset that it's back ordered. High quality images, making sure that those are accurately represent the product, that you have images for each one of the products that you have. I see people with shopping feeds where they don't even have pictures of the product. So those are things that you want to have optimized. Product titles and descriptions that make sense, especially for Amazon. If you'll see some of those have pretty long product titles, the reason for that is including relevant keywords and descriptions to increase search visibility. So sometimes you're writing in these ways that are more descriptive than just your brand name. So those are considerations that you want to have for SEO, and then obviously making sure it's regularly updated, and feed management tools. Feedonomics is a good one I've used before. The issue with uploading to all these different platforms is you have to maintain each one of those connections separately. If you are planning on launching on all three of those platforms, a tool like Feedonomics will let you manage your feed straight from Shopify into all of those different platforms automatically. So if you're planning on, becoming a marketplace seller in all those categories, you're probably going to want a third-party tool to manage those feeds, and Feedonomics is a good choice there. So one of the other things beyond that, on top of getting your listings out across the web and making them more visible, is cross-selling and upselling techniques. So cross-selling is encouraging customers to buy related or complementary items. If you're through checkout on Amazon, this is something that you'll see where it says people also bought this. The objective of those types of subtle pushes is to increase the average order value that someone has. Upselling would be if you're pushing someone to buy a more expensive or premium version of the chosen item. So a lot of times you see that where they're pushing you to buy the middle option, where it'll have some kind of sticker that says, best value or something like that. So that's pushing people to a higher product tier. Both of these can increase the revenue that your shop has, and there are small things that you can do to enable that. And that's the key difference. Cross selling focuses on additional products, upselling is the same product, higher end version, and those are to increase customer value and boost revenue. So, some techniques there, which I already touched on. Identify complementary products. So these are ones that you can sell in bundles, you can sell it in subscriptions, you can add the plugins that say people also bought this. There are a lot of pushes that you can have to combine certain products, but you want to also have an understanding of what do certain people, typically buy with multiple products. Do they want a bundle? Do they want a subscription? Find things that you can do there, and add that to the checkout experience to increase that average order value, which goes into strategic placement and timing. Those should be delivered at touch points on the product page, in the cart, or during checkout. And you'll see that if you go through the Amazon checkout process, you'll see all of those touch points in there. And platforms like Shopify, if they don't do it natively, they have the ability to do that through the plugins. And then you want to look at your customer data to identify opportunities to do that. And there, you can also do that through advertising. You can do that through email outreach if they've already bought something. There are lots of techniques to do that. And I would encourage you to also go to other e-commerce stores and sign up for their email newsletters and see what kind of offers that you get. Those are all things that you want to look into. Upselling techniques, higher value alternatives. So saying, if you have some kind of quiz, it pushes you to like a higher tier item based on your use case. Product features, craft compelling messages. You need to make the case for why someone would get a more premium tier. And some of that is copywriting, some of it is positioning, stickers. There's a lot of different options depending on what you're looking for. So KPIs, these are some of the biggest things that if you do not know these as a business owner, it's going to be very difficult to engage a marketing agency or understand the performance of your business in a way where you can make good decisions. So in the short term, you want to be looking at conversion rate. So the percentage of people who visit your website that make a purchase. So if it's a high conversion rate, that indicates you have good marketing where people are visiting your website and it is what they expected, or it resonates with the messaging that you had on the marketing side. The site design is easy to navigate, and so there's not, you don't have to click too many buttons to go through the checkout. The checkout experience is easy and frictionless. There are lots of things that you can do there, but you want to pay a lot of attention to your conversion rate, because the little things that you can do to increase your conversion rate is going to increase revenue way more than increasing marketing spend. So conversion rate is something that you want to pay a lot of attention to. Your average order value, you should know this off the top of your head. Of people who come to my website that check out, what is that average ticket value? I can tell you, I have an electronics repair business, and I know straight off the top of my head, my average ticket value is $150. If you can't tell me that, as an e-commerce store owner, that is something that you need to know. And a lot of the analytics tools in the checkout, Shopify, they'll be able to tell you this number pretty easily. You also want to understand your cart abandonment rate. And these are things where you can add, that cross-selling, that upselling. So if someone adds something to their cart and then they leave your website, there are tools that you can have to re-engage that person, text, email, ads, where it says, hey, you forgot something in the cart. Do you want to go ahead and check out? Here's, a discount. Here's a complimentary product. A lot of different things there, but you want to pay attention to that cart abandonment rate, because if you have a lower rate, that means that you probably have a smoother checkout process. If it's pretty high, you want to make sure you are removing barriers from people giving you money, essentially. The long-term ones, customer lifetime value. So this would be beyond the individual purchase, how many people return to your business to purchase, and how does that grow over time. And so if you are a business who's an e-commerce store that has a low ticket value product, so for example, any products essentially under, $100, you are typically not actually breaking even on ad spend on the average order value. You're breaking even on your lifetime value. Say a product like, Charmin, like toilet paper, they don't necessarily run, they don't have a sales team, and they aren't necessarily looking to break even on ad spend for an individual purchase of, toilet paper. It's the amount that you purchase over time. So when you're evaluating your ad spend, especially for if you have a small ticket value for e-commerce, you really want to pay attention to your customer lifetime value, because I see a lot of businesses um, that focus on evaluating their market spend on the profitability of an average ticket value. But as long as your customer lifetime value is higher than that customer acquisition cost, then you're still making money on your marketing spend. And so the ways that you would evaluate that is your return on investment. And in respect to ad spend, it's called ROAS, return on ad spend. So evaluating of the marketing tactics that you're using, and you can evaluate through your analytics tools, which ones are giving me a higher average order value, higher average lifetime value, and then you want to evaluate the payback period of those things. So if, for example, you aren't breaking even or you're losing money on that first purchase transaction, how many months does it take to catch up to ultimately pay for that expense, right? So if you have an average order value of $150, and for the first order you spend say $175 to acquire that first customer, you're losing $25 there. And so a lot of businesses would say, hey, turn that off. But if your customer lifetime value is 750 or $1,000, and you acquired that customer for 175, you are still making money in the long term. And a lot of businesses don't understand that, especially if they have small ticket value. If you have a small ticket value, your marketing spend for the first transaction, you are almost always going to lose money. So you're evaluating these on the long term. So you want to make sure that you have an understanding of the short-term KPIs and the long-term KPIs to evaluate your campaigns as a leading indicator, but as the metrics that ultimately matter. So things that you're doing to optimize those. Regularly review those KPIs to understand the effectiveness. Use segmentation to drill down into specific behaviors. So if you're evaluating customers that came from a particular email campaign versus Facebook ads, do those have higher average order values over time? Do they have higher lifetime value over time? Something that I see a lot of businesses do wrong is they consider marketing just to be giving discounts all the time. And discounts tend to attract one-time and price-sensitive customers, which are not the type of customers that you want to acquire. And I see businesses do this all the time because they have no other way how to market. So instead of, cementing the core value of their offering at full price, they're constantly offering, 10, 20, 30, even 50% off on random dates for people that would have converted anyways. And now you're trying to market to these very price sensitive customers who are probably only going to check out once. So those are the things that you want to separate out, is like, okay, so people who converted from a 50% off discount code, how many of them came back and bought something later? you will probably find that it was way less than someone who was through an email campaign or from social media where they follow you on social media. There's lots of different ways to evaluate that. So that is segmenting where your customers are coming from instead of having that one overall number to figure out where there's pockets where you might want to invest more or invest less. And part of that is A/B testing. So, experimenting with different layouts of landing pages. You can give people different experiences to see if one converts higher than other. User feedback. You can have surveys. You can look at actual user sessions. You can look at heat maps, which a heat map would be an example of how far people scroll down the page and what they click on. You can get recordings of that or just see it visibly in an image. And those are ways that you can determine if you need to change certain things about the layout of your website. And the continuous improvement cycle, you just want to continue to test, measure, and learn over time and optimize based on data insights. Again, what I see a lot of people do wrong is they don't have the data to make these decisions and they just kind of make it up. And it's a lot of people in a meeting who don't really have understanding of which levers to pull. So you need to know which levers to pull and which variables that you're isolating to determine if you have enough data to make a change. Because a lot of times, if you engage a creative agency, like a design agency, they're going to tell you need to redesign their website, and if you don't have the data to understand where and why you are making these updates, you are essentially throwing money away that you might not need to spend. Um, so, final slide there. Name is Chandler Kellogg. Title is Director of Growth Marketing. That's my email and phone and booking link. And with that, I will open up to questions. If you have any.
If you would
Hey,
like to unmute and ask your questions, that would be great.
hey Chandler, thank you for the presentation. Quick question. So to start building a website like from your agency, like do you have any price range, starting price? Like this is like I'm looking for e-commerce website, which is a single product website for now. So I'm just curious about the price range that you offer.
Yeah, so for my agency in particular, the smaller end would be, so basically the low end would be $1,500, and that's typically includes like brand logo and like a single page or probably up to 3 or 4 page website. That doesn't have a whole lot of functionality. Mid-range websites for a lot of small to mid-sized businesses would be like $3,000 to $5,000, and then e-commerce, depending on the functionality, especially if you have a large product catalog, could be closer to 10,000. So it really depends on the platform that you're using, how much optimization you need with the product. Do you need product images? Do you need copywriting? Do you need a lot of this additional stuff? So I could sit there and quote that out for you, but you generally want to shop around, especially based on the platform that you're planning on using, right? So, for example, I mostly exclusively for e-commerce websites work with Shopify. If you wanted to use WooCommerce or Magento, I would probably recommend you out to a different agency. So it depends on how much work that you need to create that website brand logo, your product feed, and what you already have in there. If you need the copywriting and the images, or if that's already ready to go, and then kind of the timeline and platform that you're using.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I mean, one more question. Do you support with like regarding the logo and the package design as well?
Yeah, so one of the platforms that I recommend, and also I see a lot of messages in the chat about this presentation. I will share this presentation and make sure everyone has a copy of it, so you don't have to worry about that. And apologies for talking quickly, trying to make time. But yeah, give me the question again.
Oh, yeah, just looking for help regarding the logo and package design, label
Right.
and package design.
So one of the platforms that I would recommend, especially for a lot of small businesses, is a website called Looka, Looka. I'll just share my screen on that really quickly. So this is a good one. It's 95 for the year, and something that a lot of businesses don't think about, especially when they engage an agency for design, is that you will need more than one asset. So this is Looka. I'll share this in the chat and also in the feed. But to give you an example, if you go to the brand kit, this is what you get in this brand kit. So this is AI generated. You get 300 plus designs when you do this. So that includes your social profiles. It includes social posts. It includes business card templates. It includes email signatures. So this is one of the, cheapest and best ways to get all the assets that you need, because when I'm working with you as an agency, if you don't already have these assets, I'm going to have to charge, you to create these. And so a lot of people engage an agency and they get, a logo custom design, and then they have to pay for every single asset that is created after that. I'll see some agencies, which is a fair price for a custom design flyer, say $150. If you didn't use one of these templated type services, you're going to have to pay for every single one of those assets. So look for businesses that are just starting out. That is a great one where you can get a lot of brand assets for a very, very low cost.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, but I will try to reach out to you offline regarding the Shopify store build. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll throw my contact information in the chat really quickly.
Chandler, would you share your last screens? Oh, you put it in the chat. Thank you
I
very
was
much.
just getting ready to ask them.
Yeah, I'll show it on the screen again, but I also send this presentation out afterwards, so I'll make sure I get it over to Robert Jones in the SBDC, and I have about 5 or 6 other presentations that also cover website development and analytics in greater depth, and certain things on sales and marketing tactics. So I can send this one, as well as any of the other presentations that we've done in the past, which probably Robert Jones would be able to give you a copy of, or give you an overview of all the different presentations that I've done in the past. Happy to share those for everyone.
I have a question. Once you create the site, do you also monitor and do all that background work? Is that something ongoing, or is it something we would have to have somebody in-house and do that separately?
Yeah, so the way that we operate, and this is also something that I would flag when you're shopping around for development shops, is certain agencies will kind of hold your website hostage. So when you terminate your maintenance package with them, for example, some of them, the less savory ones, will just take your website offline and say that, oh, you don't owe it. So one of the things that you really want to look at as a business owner is, do I own the website that I've had designed for me when I am no longer engaged with this business? And so that's something that we do differently. We don't white label any tools. I tell you the tools and the platforms that we're using, and oftentimes I set it up with your own information. So after we're done with the website development process, you have the ability to maintain that or engage someone else for maintenance, or take it in-house if you'd like. So Shopify, and for general small businesses, I like to use Webflow. So Webflow and Shopify, the reason that they're great is that they don't require an ongoing maintenance package. Of course, I'm happy to support that if you need that, especially if you're going to make a lot of ongoing changes to your website. But what we do is we design websites to where we can just hand you the keys and say, hey, at the end of this project, really the only thing that you need to pay, especially for a pretty small website, is just the hosting fees. And hosting fees for the majority of these websites is somewhere between like $40 and probably $70 a month, depending on the traffic and features that you have. And you just pay that directly to the platform. So the way that we would operate in those is, we don't necessarily really have just a maintenance package that we do. We would engage you on a retainer for a variety of other services. So our smaller retainer is like $500 a month, and so in that we could potentially allocate 2 or 3 hours to website development changes if you need them, but we can also help with design work, admin work. So our general retainer, well, I'll go over the 4 different business models. This applies to our agency, and this also applies to a lot of other agencies as well. You'll typically have a general retainer, where if that's a loosely scoped project, so it's an extension of your marketing team or yourself if you're an individual business owner, and that can be a number of different activities, flyer here, business card here, social post here, update, ad copy, whatever, charge those hourly against a retainer. Our minimum is $500 a month. The minimum for a website fixed project is typically logo branding website. Our minimum for that is 1,500. A lot of businesses, especially around Charleston, depending on the features that you need, the design that you need, is going to be somewhere in the $3,000 to $10,000 range, maybe even 15,000 if you have a big e-commerce site. That's kind of what you're shopping around for. Ad management is typically for a lot of agencies about 20% of your ad spend. So if I'm running, Google ads, Facebook ads, Snapchat, Instagram, it's typically we charge a 20% management fee of that spend. Where I see a lot of agencies take more than their fair share there is if you're running something like programmatic display, which would be if you're on a website like ESPN and you see paragraph of text, image ad, paragraph of text, that's a display ad. The cost per 1,000 views on those, or a CPM, cost per million, is typically like $3 to $5. So some agencies will inflate that to $10 in the reporting and pocket 50% of your ad spend. So there's there's lots of different ways that you can kind of be taken advantage of by agencies, especially ones that offer lower prices than average. So what you really want to look under the hood at is, do these numbers make sense? Am I getting the native in-platform reporting, not some third-party reporting tool? Because I want to see what it is straight out of the ad platforms, especially. And then when I am no longer engaged with you as an agency, do I own my website? Can I take it, however I want to take it to someone else? Those three things, if you don't ask those from the jump, sometimes a year or two later, when you find that agency is more expensive, you'll be in for a rude awakening when you have to pay another $10,000 to design the same site. I see that all the time, and it's really not best practice by a lot of agencies.
Are there any other questions this afternoon?
I only have one other question since I'm here.
Sure.
And I have to call you behind the scenes, but I am just getting started, like really early, with this, and I know nothing about your expertise.
Mhm.
So when should I get someone like you involved?
Well, what we do is we have free discovery calls. So we'll, at least be able to sit with you for, one discovery call is typically, 15 to 30 minutes just to get an idea of what you're currently working with, what your objectives are. And then we can sit down for kind of a longer call, a follow-up call for that, probably between 30 minutes to an hour to kind of create a proposal, based on your budget, your requirements, all those kind of things, which again, for the website, just for transparency, the minimum is going to be 1,500 there. Probably, on the upper end would be 5,000 for a smaller website that's just getting started out. And when we create that quote for you, we'll give you all the information that you need, and we encourage you to shop around. Right. So I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, you need to use this exclusively after we build this out for you. If there's someone else out there that specializes, especially like I said, if you have a platform where you're trying to do more WooCommerce or Magento, that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, although I have referral partners for that. But the vast majority, Shopify is going to be the way to go. And even if you're starting it yourself, it really depends on your level of competency. But a lot of people can get started by just picking out one of the templates and going from there. And if I am, kind of too on the expensive side, there are also certain freelancer platforms I can, send you references for. But typically, the main thing that you want to consider is, do I just need a website, or am I going to also engage on marketing afterwards? Because what you generally would want if you want marketing afterwards is that you would want to engage someone like us, which is a full service agency. So what I also see happen sometimes is, people will engage a marketing agency just for the website development, and then they have to switch over to a different agency to do their ads management. And sometimes that transition is not very seamless, especially if the agency that designed it didn't design it in a way to where it's easy to transfer those controls to a different agency or to you directly. So those are the considerations that you want to be looking for.
Thank you. I'll call for the exploratory, what'd you call it?
Yeah, discovery call. So typically,
I'll call for
yeah,
this.
so
I'll make the discovery appointment in your link.
Sure. Yeah. So
Thank
anyone
you.
can use that meeting link. That would be the preferred way to do it. So, feel free to grab some time, typically, 15 to 30 minutes for the first call, and I can, go through and we can evaluate your needs and then schedule a secondary call to review a proposal if you want, and then move forward from there. Just engage on it and pay and go from there. Or, take it, shop it around and see if you can do it yourself or through some other agency that might have, for whatever reason, more close alignment with your needs.
Thank you.
I have a question. What should be the ideal ad spend budget if you're starting brand new, like you have a one product and you are selling on your own Shopify store? This is not a drop shipping, but ideally like a new brand that is launched with a one hero product.
Yeah, so what I would say if you're looking for a kind of true healthy budget, well, there's two rules of thumb. The first one, generally speaking, is your overall marketing budget should be probably close to 10% of your revenue. Because if it's smaller than that, of course, you can run smaller than that, but that means you're probably not investing enough in the growth of your company moving forward. So that's just kind of a rule of thumb. But in terms of actual platforms, it's very difficult to run any kind of paid spend that's going to be effective below about like 2 to 3,000 a month. So to give you an example of a platform where you can run spend for less than that, if you are a local service business, say you're a roofing contractor, you can run Google LSA ads often for under 500 a month. That's super lead generated, but that's only available to certain businesses. If you're an e-commerce store, typically at minimum you're looking between 2 and 5,000 a month for a healthy amount of ad spend. And when I say healthy, what I mean is that it's effective, it hits enough people, and it gets out of the learning phase, because each of these platforms, it has to have a certain amount of spend to be able to optimize to the right people. So if you don't have enough spend, sometimes you'll be below the platform minimums, so your campaigns won't run at all, or they'll run with very degraded performance, and that is basically going to be not a good investment of your money and time. So what I would say is, if you don't want to go that way, what I would start with first, especially if you're just starting out, is getting the shopping feeds set up, because those are free and you get additional exposure without having to pay for ad spend. Although you can pay for ad spend on Google, on Amazon, on Walmart, and get featured listings. So I'd probably look into those first. And then I would look into creating content for organic social. Some good platforms for that, if you have an e-commerce product, Join Brands would be one. I can give some examples over email if anyone wants to book a call. But there are these platforms called influencer or UGC, user-generated content seeding platforms. I've used several of these in the past. And so you can have your product available where people, will make videos for you, sometimes as low as $50 per video. You send them the product, they send you the video, and then you can upload that to social or run ad spend behind it. So in terms of what you're looking at, you would be, if you're kind of below probably $2,000 to $5,000 a month, would be getting those shopping feeds set up, and then maybe doing some of the influencer seeding stuff, get some of those videos created. And then as those videos perform better organically, which organically on social just means you're posting it without paying for ad spend behind it, the ones that do better, you can turn those into ads. So if you are on a lower budget, as a founder, create as much of that content as you can yourself, post it on social media, yourself, and then set up those shopping feeds. And then when you're getting closer to probably the $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 a month that you have based on 10% of revenue, that's where you would want to start really investing in ad spend. If you do it too early, though, you can waste a lot of money because you don't have existing user data. But one of the things that I will say, just to wrap this up, and this is in a previous presentation I've done before, is you can install ad pixels on your website before you run ads. And I would encourage most businesses to do this, because if you set up your Facebook ad pixel, what that does is Facebook is going to optimize your campaigns based on people who are already visiting your website, and you can set that up for free.
Yeah,
I think that answer your question.
Yeah, I just gave a pause because someone is talking. But yeah, thank you very much. That's really an excellent strategy. Like if you are running on a low budget. So you talked about, I have a follow-up question. So you talked about the 10% of your revenue. So are you talking about the AOV of 10% or the gross profit of 10%?
So revenue. So that would be before, pulling out any kind of expenses. That's just kind of a rule of thumb. So, that's not exactly what you have to spend, but you're looking at two different things, right? So that is kind of a good rule of thumb. And there are different category reports. I can send you a category report, by each individual, industry breakdown in terms of what is a normal marketing overall spend. What you're kind of, I think, specifically asking about with the AOV. That's a number that you need to have that you'll be able to look at in your Shopify reporting, where it'll tell you, hey, what's your overall average order value? How to, does it change over time? Does it change by cohort segment? Seeing who comes from which sources. Those are things that you can segment out and optimize. But in general, that number is based off your overall revenue target for growth. But the platform minimums, like I said, Google, I think TikTok is a good example. TikTok, at minimum, you have to spend $50 a day if you're running ads. So you cannot run ads for less than that. So that's the consideration that you really have there when you're getting started out is, do I have enough money to even run the minimum spend on these platforms? And you really don't have the ability to do that until you're spending about $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which is why you'd want to look into the organic tactics, email, adding those shopping feeds to where you get visibility without ad spend first, and then also optimizing your conversion rates. So you want to optimize all that stuff and get it running before you start running ads. Otherwise, you'll light a lot of money on fire.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on that. But can you share us the websites regarding the UGC content, user-generated content, the other websites
Yep.
that you talked about? Yeah, maybe that is a very good start, when you are in budget.
Yeah, let me pull these up. I can send you a list of them. Join Brands is one of the ones that is easiest to do and cheapest. But I will send you a full list of some of the ones that I have on here. So, well, I can actually share this too. This is an example of some that I'm running for. I actually run with my girlfriend a UGC account just to get some practice on this. So this is an example of all the different platforms, companies, start date, deadlines, and compensation. So, you see a lot of these videos, are typically paid, either just with a product reimbursement, or they're somewhere around, 50 to 150. Some of them can get pretty expensive. Like we had one for Square that we did for $500, and then another one that was a bunch of workout videos for an ad platform that we were paid $800 to do. But most of these are, in terms of if you're using these platforms, you're typically paying somewhere between $50 and $150 per video that you're getting. And then the platforms, these would be some of the platforms that you're looking at.
I missed something. What's the name of your company?
It's hotbutton.io, HOTBUTTON.io.
Okay. And you use HubSpot just for your meetings?
Yeah, so I use that as my CRM because my CRM is more specific to sales. So if you're using a sales CRM, those would be ones like HubSpot, like Salesforce. Those would not necessarily be ones that you use for e-commerce. The one that I use for my repair shop, which has both a ticketing system, so to associate part inventory that I'm using for repair with a ticket, and then it also has e-commerce functionality. That one's called Repair Desk. So it really depends on the product category that you have, or if you even need a CRM. If you do need a CRM, you would obviously, like I said, you want one that's compatible with the website platform that you select, your payment methods, the calendar management, all that type of stuff that you have, which, by the way, that's what we would do the discovery call for, is, evaluate what you're currently using, what you want, and then build that into a proposal and make sure all those things are compatible. That's something that we would take care of for you. But most of the time, if you're a normal e-commerce website, you aren't necessarily going to use a CRM. You're just going to be using the analytics that are natively built into the platform, like Shopify. Typically, what I see most e-commerce platforms do after, if they need anything on top of that, is an advanced email platform. One of the good ones for e-commerce is Klaviyo. So once you already have people that have checked out or that have, say, filled out a newsletter form, email is basically, free once people are on your list. So you can do more stuff that way. Another thing that you can do also is there are certain, especially for Shopify, you can turn your Shopify store into an app, and then you can send push notifications to people. Yeah, so this is also a very advanced, this covers a lot of different stuff. So the short answer for the vast majority of small businesses is set up Shopify, start with a template, watch some YouTube tutorials, and see if you can even get it going yourself. And if you find yourself spending, more than like a week trying to get a simple website set up on Shopify, then you should probably work with someone else. But the biggest thing that I see is that a lot of people who haven't designed websites before don't have a good understanding of how they should be laid out or how they can scale over time. So for example, like Shopify, category pages and the way that those are, automatically generated through pagination, which pagination is just when you have the same page on a website, but you can click through image categories or product categories. Some of that stuff is more technical to set up. So if you have, a single product website, especially with a template, you might be able to get it going yourself. But if you have probably more than 30 or 50 products, you might want to engage an agency to, at minimum, give you a proposal.
What about the landing page? Is it like, can we do it ourselves if you are running a one product?
Yeah, so there are also kind of a whole separate category. Is it a physical product or is it like a knowledge or tech product?
Yeah, it's a physical product. It's a skincare. Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, I would say, and I'm happy to do a discovery call just to, take a look at what you need, but there might be some templates that, you can make some of these modifications yourself and at least get started. Because, sometimes you just want to do what is called, an MVP or minimum viable product. If you don't have, several $1,000s to spend on this website quite yet, look through some of the templates on Shopify, watch a couple of YouTube tutorials, see if you can upload it and get it going. And then I would say personally, if you spin your wheels for more than about 2 weeks, you should probably talk to someone.
Okay, sounds good. I will go ahead and schedule that discovery call. Thank you, Chandler.
Yeah, no problem. And also for those calls too, and this goes for anyone, I'm happy to, if it seems like you'd be able to do it yourself, I'm happy to, give you a couple templates and some guides to get started and a couple, blog posts or videos. And if you can knock it out, great, you didn't need us. And if you can't, we can talk a month later.